Hello, here we are back in Mama Maria's kitchen. Today we're going to make some pasta al forno with meatballs. I'm going to make two different sizes of meatballs, the tiny ones and the bigger ones. So I can use the tiny meatballs, leave them in the sauce and cook the pasta al forno with them. It's kind of a mock lasagna with mozzarella and stuff. It's delicious. Everybody loves that. So here we are. I've got some ground veal. This happens it happens to be just veal today because, you know, like grocery shopping is a little difficult in these pandemic times. So, but you can use a mixture of veal and pork if you like. You could do 60-40, 50-50, whatever your preference is, or beef and pork as well. I would stick with mixing with beef or veal. I would stick to pork, a nice lean pork or extra lean pork, because it gives a lot of flavor and it keeps the meatballs really moist. So for today it's only going to be veal. So I have about 1.25 pounds of veal, which is actually going to be too much for me to use today. So I'm going to freeze some meatballs. So in a subsequent video you will see how to freeze your meatballs. Okay, so 1.25 pounds of meat. I'm going to push it over to one side to make room for the cheese and breadcrumbs. Sorry. Okay. Now, I'm going to put the breadcrumbs in. So I have breadcrumbs. These I grated myself. These I bought from the store. The difference being, these were free, these I paid for. Basically, that's it. You can make your own breadcrumbs simply by getting, you know, extra leftover bread, letting it get hard, putting it in a cloth bag, and let it get hard, and then grate it. Simple as that. So we're going to see how much we're going to need. Now, normally I don't measure, but for this demonstration I will measure because you have to have some guide as to how much you should put. So I'm going to start off with a scant 2 cups of breadcrumbs. So it's like 1.75 cups. Let's put it that way. Yeah, that looks about right actually. And now I just grated some cheese. This is freshly grated Parmesan. Now you can buy the pre-grated one, that works fine too. I just don't have any, so I had to grate some. So when you grate your own, you add the added bonus of little chunks. These, I actually put a few of them in the sauce already, which I have cooking, which is almost cooked. So I'm going to go with 1 nice full cup of breadcrumbs, or pardon me, of cheese. There you go. So that's about right. So the ratio would be 2 parts breadcrumbs to 1 part cheese. Okay. Then I have here grated, or pardon me, chopped. I have parsley, basil, and garlic, and they're all chopped fine. So I'm going to just put those in. Now I have to salt the meat. Oops. So I'm going to get my kosher salt, and just however much you like. So now I just go by eye. This is probably about a teaspoon to a teaspoon and a half, and some black pepper. Now, as you know, fresh ground is always best, but if you have pre-ground, that works fine too. There we go. And I'm also going to need 2 to 3 eggs, which are here, and I will crack them as I need them. Okay? So now first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this mixture and mix it together. Yeah, that's a perfect blend. Okay, so you just mix it together roughly like that. Now I'm going to put in 2 eggs. I might need a 3rd. I'll see. So I like to crack my eggs in a bowl, as I said before, because you never know what you can find in the eggs. Like that. See? Take that out. So there's 1. And there's 2. Now I'm going to put in 3. Okay. 3 eggs. Now, if it was like half the meat, I would have probably put into, if it was, let's say, 3/4 of a pound to a pound, I would have probably put in 2. But because there's an extra 1/4 pound here, I put in the 3rd egg. So now you get right in there with your hands. This is a great job for kids to do. They love mushing things up with their hands. And there's no other way of doing it. I mean, you can try with forks and spoons and utensils and this, that, the other. The best way to do it is with your hands, because you can feel the texture. You can feel if it's too dry or too wet. So if it's too dry, it'll be very crumbly and fall apart in your hands, and you will feel it dry in your hands. If it's too wet, then it goes mushy and they're not going to hold together. Now, this is actually very nice. It could stand to be a little bit more wet. Also, the other thing, the more eggs you put in, the harder they become. So the eggs are not, they're just a binding. They are not to moisten the meatballs or moisten the breadcrumbs. So this feels like it's a little hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put some sauce in here. All right, so I'm over here to the sauce. It's been cooking and it's almost finished cooking, but I want to put the meatballs in there so you can see that it's cooking away beautifully. It smells wonderful. This is the sauce, the tomato sauce that I have on a previously made video. Now this ladle is about like a quarter, up to about there is about a 1/4 cup. So I'm going to put in 1, 2, 3. So that's like 3/4 cup of sauce. And the sauce is fairly thick, that's why I added a little bit extra. You see that? Okay, so here it is. Now I'm going to mix this sauce right into the meat mixture. Now, if you don't happen to have sauce already made, which, well, normally you would, tomato juice works well too. Okay, so you see how it's moistening up and it's becoming softer. So that's how you soften meatballs, is with sauce or tomato juice, not with eggs. Eggs will make them hard. Okay, so here we are. There's still a fair bit of sauce that needs to be put in there. Okay. Now this is not an exact science, because the breadcrumbs are dried and they can be more dry or less dry. The cheese also can be more aged or less aged. That will affect the consistency. The meat can have more fat or less fat. Now, this is nice, but I'm thinking that I could use a little bit more liquid. Rather than adding sauce, I'm just going to add a little bit of water. And that's fine. So just a little bit of water, sprinkle it on, because it's a nice soft texture that I'm looking for. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So that's going to make a fair bit of meatballs, as I said, but because I had it in one clump, I didn't want to not use it, and I, didn't want to leave it for tomorrow, because then that would be me cooking something else. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll them out. So to roll them out, you do need some water. I have a plate here that I'm going to sprinkle a bit of Parmesan cheese on it so that the meatballs don't stick. So they don't stick to the plate. Plus, you put that in the sauce, it adds a lot of flavor. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to moisten my hands with water. Okay? And I'm going to start off by making the small ones. Okay, so you don't need much meat, or much meat mixture. Roll them in your hands. So these are going to go right in the sauce to cook and be used later for the mixed in with the pasta. I'm going to make rigatoni today. for the pastel forno. So you do that until you have the desired amount of meatballs that you like. These are also, by the way, these are also great in soup. Make that Italian meatball soup, or the, what do they call it? The whiting soup. Add meatballs to it. Oh, yum, yum. So once you've reached that, the amount that you want, then you can roll out the bigger meatballs. Now, how big you make them or how small you make them is up to you. So you see, they should kind of ideally fit in the palm of your hand. Okay, so wet my hands one more time. Some people use oil. I find that that just makes the sauce a bit too heavy and oily. The water works really well. Okay, so one little bit more, a couple more demos. Okay. Okay, so I have all of my small meatballs that I need rolled out. Now I'm just going to drop them in the sauce. See how the sauce is simmering away nicely? And I'm just going to drop them in just as they are without frying. I don't like to fry the meatballs because, again, it becomes oily. So you'll see that they'll just all kind of drop in. Okay. Give the pot a shake. Don't stir, just a shake. Okay. Cover it up and let it come back to a boil. In the meantime, you make your larger meatballs that can be used just to eat as a second course, or to have later as meatball sandwiches. Now, who doesn't love meatball sandwiches? So my large meatballs are all rolled out, and you see I still have plenty left over. Now this, I'm going to actually make into more meatballs and freeze them. Or you can make them into like little patties and fry them. And they're great for snacks for kids. They just love those fried, and then you add a little Parmesan cheese after they're drained on paper towel. They're just delicious. So now I'm going to go ahead and put these in the sauce. As you can see, the sauce is bubbling nicely. Okay, meatballs are cooking. Now, after they've set, now I can just gently give them a bit of a stir. Okay, you see how they are? Okay, now I have the temperature set at a medium because you don't want it to boil over to boil too hard, or it's going to burn at the bottom. So now I'm going to take even the large meatballs. I don't fry them. I don't like them that way. So I'm going to take and drop them in one at a time, trying not to put them one on top of the other at this stage. So there we go. We'll see how many will fit. And I'm rolling them in the cheese so I don't waste any of that. Big proponent of not wasting anything, especially food. Having been in the food business for 30 years, the waste really adds up financially, plus it, yeah, perfect. So now, yes, the waste really adds up financially, plus there's so many people that are hungry and would love to have even a fraction of what this is. So now again, I'm just going to take and just give them a little roll with the pan, cover them up. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit to about 3, and which is like a medium-low, and just let them hang out there in the pot for a little bit until they're cooked. They'll take about 15 minutes or so to cook. You can leave them longer, and that's fine. If you leave them 20 minutes, it's not the end of the world. So here we go. They're starting to bubble, and that's what you want. So let them hang out in the pot there. So meatballs are cooking away. The sauce is just starting to bubble up. So I'm just going to do this again. So far I'm not going to stir them quite yet. Just do that just so they don't stick to the bottom. Cover it up and let them hang out. Alright, so let's check the meatballs, see their progress. Oh yum, look at that. Now I can actually go in very gently and stir them. Okay? Just make sure that the bottom isn't catching on anything. Now you see how the small meatballs are intact, big meatballs are intact. No need to fry them, just excess oil, I think, and indigestion, quite frankly. So I'm going to just let them cook for another 15 minutes or so. In the meantime, I'm going to put my water on to cook the pasta. So we'll see you when the pasta is cooked. So the water is almost boiling. I'm going to add my salt to it because water should be salted for pasta. Now, again, I don't really measure, so I'm going to say this much salt and that much water. I probably have about 3 liters of water in there. Then I will check for salt as it cooks. So I'll let that come to a boil. In the meantime, we have our meatballs and sauce cooking away. Look at that. Doesn't that look amazing? So another quick stir, just very gentle. Just kind of shake the pan or the pot. Cover it up. At this point, it can even be turned off. Okay? So when that water boils, I'm going to put the rigatoni in there. I have just under half a package, so just under half a pound of pasta. And this is going to be for 2 people. It'll be 2 meals out of it, not just 1, because it's going to be very hearty. Okay? So when the water boils, I'm just going to drop it in, give it a stir, and let it finish cooking. Now the rigatoni take a little while to cook. They take about 10-12 minutes. And the sauce, for pasta al forno, the sauce should be a little bit more liquidy, not as thick as you would have for spaghetti, just because this has a tendency to absorb the sauce as it cooks in the oven. Okay? Well, the pasta is boiling. The water is boiling, I should say. Now I'm going to drop the pasta in there to cook. Whoops, lost one. Casualty of war. Okay. So a quick stir so it doesn't stick. You should always stir your pasta as soon as you put it in, because they will stick together if you don't. Okay. And the water has been salted, as you saw. And I'm hoping it's going to be enough, but we'll taste after. So now I'm going to just cover it, not quite closed. It's on very high. I'm going to turn it down a notch, just because I know my stove will boil over if I don't. The other thing I did, I already turned the oven on at 350 to preheat. Depends on your oven how hot it is. You can put it to 400 or 375. Actually, this oven here, I'm going to let it preheat at 350, but I'm going to end up putting it at 375 because it's very slow. That's the one thing I find with this oven. It's a great oven, but it's very, very slow. Okay, so now I'm going to let that cook. And now I can actually turn off my sauce. So I'm going to turn that off because it looks wonderful. It smells delicious. Okay, the pasta is almost cooked, so I'm going to remove the larger meatballs from the sauce. You see how it looks? When it's done, you see a little bit of oil at the top, and that's all you should be seeing. So with a fork, I'm just going to gently pull them out and put them in a serving plate. These ones here will be reserved to have either, like I said, meatball sandwich. Who doesn't love a meatball sandwich with sauce and mozzarella on a crusty bun? So there you have the meatballs. They're so moist. They would come apart with a feather. Like, look. They're so moist. This, the sauce is an old trick that my mom taught me. Not everybody knows how to do that, or knows enough to do that. But her meatballs were always the best around. And in fact, my daughter, at our annual family picnic, there's a food competition, and she won for the best meatballs. So I'm very proud of that. She even beat me. Not sure how that happened, but she beat me. So anyway, this is, it's all in good fun. I did win one year for the best stuffed eggplant, which are similar to meatballs, but are made out of eggplant, just that. Okay, I'll take out this leaf of basil. So you see, these are one. The small meatballs remain in the sauce. They're going to get tossed right in with the pasta, and then I'm going to add Parmesan and mozzarella to the pasta al forno and then bake it. Well, the pasta is cooked and drained. I have my casserole dish ready. Just going to put the pasta in there. That out of the way. And then I'm going to get a spoon, a nice big spoon like this, to pour the sauce over and toss it. I'd rather use a spoon than a ladle because you can gently get underneath the meatballs, as opposed to a ladle. You're kind of crushing them because of the shape of it. So there is the pasta. So now I'm going to toss it. Toss it all together. Now you're going to need a fair bit of sauce in here. Let's face it, the more sauce the better. Okay. There you go. So it's tossed now. Now I'm going to add Parmesan cheese, some of my grated one, and mozzarella. Now the mozzarella, I freeze. Living in the country, I can't always get to the store, and now with this quarantine, you can't get to the store even less. So I freeze the mozzarella. It's fine. So now I'm just going to take it and put it right on there. Just frozen. Don't defrost it. Just frozen like that. Then I'm just going to give it a little bit of a toss to put it all right through. Because you want to have the sauce, or the cheese through the pasta as well as on top. Now I guarantee that with children, this is a real hit. They just love this pasta. I mean, who wouldn't, right? So here, oh, lost a meatball. There's a big meatball there. And I'm going to reserve some sauce for the other meatballs in the event we make meatball sandwiches, if there's any leftovers. Sometimes there are, sometimes there aren't. Okay, so here we go with this. More cheese. Okay. Now this is going to be covered. And it's going to go in the oven for half an hour. Okay, in the oven it goes. We'll see you on the other side. It is yummy. Okay, it's been half an hour. Now they're ready to come out of the oven. Now I took the lid off partway through just to get a nice little coating on there. Doesn't that look delicious? And I'm going to use that same spoon I had. So they're ready to be served, and you just dish it out like so. And some of Papa Rocco's wine, and it's buon appetito.